Hello, Mental Growth Network. Today is very interesting topic, especially for me, for a person who previously worked in game sphere. Today we have a special guest, Ranko Trifkovic, and he is a specialist in game design and narrative, specialized in education. Hello, Ranko.
Hello.
Our topic today will be very special. Gamified mental health apps versus mental health games. So we will explore what means gamification, what means game, what is the difference, because many people do mix this. And to start from, Ranko, can you tell a bit about your background? What is your connection to gaming, to gamification, to mental health, and why did you decided to speak with us about this topic?
Well, my expertise comes from several different worlds. I've started as an artist. Basically, my deepest background is in theater, but it was a contemporary theater who often deals with questions of human, like it's called anthropological theater, and it's human-centered. So it was more like experimental art, focusing on how to enhance human capabilities. What can we do to bring back human in the center of the art instead of just some text or Shakespeare or some questions that have been, kind of chewed over the thousands of years. So instead of like focusing on what's the script and who is the actor, in sense of like their name and stardom, we focused more on how can we better ourselves and overcome all the obstacles of modern age, because at one point we realized that art therapy is not something that's needed for people who cry for help. It's needed for everyone who basically lives in modern society. The simple way how society interacts with family and how family interacts with individual wounds us all very deeply, and very few solutions are offered. So that's how I got into education, because we conducted a lot of workshops where we shared knowledge from our experiments and digging deep in these topics, which kind of prepared me for deepening these kind of questions through other forms of art, where I started publishing books, mostly dealing with the topics of growing up and education. And because games were always the big part of my world, and play in the broader sense is the same in art and in games. It brought me to a situation where I'm in a better starting position as a game designer, and especially as narrative designer, understanding both principles of art and principles of play. Continuing with my education, I've worked with UNICEF and other big systems on bringing education to kids and youth. So I did a lot of youth work, and I realized that there is a glass ceiling of creativity. Basically, again, society is not giving kids nowadays any tools to be creative. For example, when I was a youngster, if I was reading books, I was also be writing books. If I was taking photos of me, I was also wanting to take photos of nature or something else. So every media that I consumed, there was a freedom to create in the same media. But when I asked kids, "Can you make games?" they gave me like shocking answers, like, "No, no, no, that's something special for some special people. No one can do it, especially not kids." And I realized that there's like a silent barrier for not only children but everyone to be creative within modern technology. So my goal was to teach technology as if it's a language, and I developed a framework which kind of helped kids start being creative immediately as they consume the technology. So And it led to a lot of interesting experiences, because in a field of tabletop games, there was always for me I saw huge potential for mental health issues to be supported and helped. And I really like the way modern tabletop games turn towards it, with a lot of systems to support players. And no wonder that endangered categories of in society today, especially those biased against, like trans or gays or bisexuals, so whoever encountered in society this kind of ostracism, tabletop games really provided a safe haven. So there's a lot of game designers and players within this sphere that kind of understood how the hell games can support them. And I'm really happy that I was there, like from the get-go when that was happening. So yeah, mental health and games were always kind of intersecting in my life. So here I am.
Wow, amazing. So you are bringing the perspective of education, arts, and technology and all in one. And this is a very interesting experience. I want to start our topic, and as an intro to it, can you, from your perspective of a designer, how do you distinguish a mental health game and gamified mental health app?
I would say the key to distinguishing this, especially because within mental health games we have several also kind of sub species, I would say. So Gamified mental health app is generally an app. So it's designed as a almost clinical tool, while games are always designed with entertainment as a front. Like first idea of games is to entertain. But then among these games, there's like mental health games which are about mental health. So it's like a game which doesn't directly support the player, but informs them, raises awareness, or features characters which are struggling with mental health. And then there are serious games which kind of dive more deep and actually do offer support through through play. Basically, they're kind of hybrid, I would say, halfway between a game and a mental health app. So basically, in titles like Celeste, when we have really a story about depression in focus, I would say that's a mental health game. But then we have this war of mine, which focuses on a different topic. They focus on how civilians survive war, but due to very nature of the topic and how much grief and stress and all kind of mental health issues it raises, it kind of also touches on these topics and supports them deeply. So, for example, one of the characters is actually capable of fighting in a game which is designed not to be a fighting game, and so, but that same person is kind of unable to stop. It's for them, it's like they cannot no longer distinguish between friends and allies. So it clearly shows what kind of mental health issues like stress and PTSD these difficulties bring, and also how to deal with them. They also delved very deeply in the topic, in the sense that one of the ways to play is to play as orphaned children. Again, not using the kids as what kind of mechanic inside of the game as a design element, but actually focusing on what these kids have to go through to survive. And so it turns out that sometimes a game which kind of takes a not direct approach to mental health issues can be quite supportive, quite powerful. The same way in literature, where Dostoevsky is said to do more for theology than theologians themselves, with this indirect approach towards questions of human soul, of human existence. So I would say that games belong to entertainment and art, while mental health apps are tools. It doesn't make them better or worse. It's just that lighter game design elements are used as a part of gamification and kind of layered on top of what these tools need to do. So there's no intrinsic emotional immersion. The mental health app kind of assumes that you want to get help, that you are aware of the issues, while mental health games can, in the same time, raise the awareness, but also raise your intrinsic motivation to seek help, to seek information, to go further, to especially because games always either tell you a story or immerse you in a story. So you either leave a game with a story. For example, you finish a game and then you have the need to say, oh my God, this is what I experienced. You need to tell your own story, or you receive a story. And anyway, stories, I think, are very healing and very a good way to communicate mental health issues, but also they're very good support. Many times in many different therapies, it's important for us to convey our story, to shine a light on a trauma, not to keep it in the dark. And games can help these as much as mental health apps, because they can actually make someone make this first step towards healing. While gamified mental health apps kind of suppose that you're already intent to be on some sort of healing path for you.
Mhm. Yes, it's quite interesting indeed. And if we will explore a bit more the topic of gamification, because gamification is kind of more now widely used. So because our auditory is a lot of health tech experts, maybe they will be interested more deep on that. Can you tell what are the common misconceptions health tech professionals have about what gamification actually means? Or if you can tell us what people think it is and what it is and what it is not.
Yeah, from my experience, one of the biggest misconceptions is that there's nothing to learn about it. Like, gamification is about giving rewards and that's it. I don't have to learn gamification processes. I don't need to learn gamification tools. And I was really lucky to meet Yu-Kai Chu, founder of one of the best gamification frameworks, where he really delves wide, not only deep, but wide. Like, he gamifies his own life. He gamifies interactions. He gamifies a lot of aspects of life, not just do this task or help yourself with something. So yeah, and there's a lot of actual knowledge that you need to have, both in sense of game design, psychology, but also in user experience. So I'd say it's a highly multidisciplinary thing, and you're gonna do it automatically. Like, I when I was having a pitch with a marketing group about gamification, wanting to show them, to teach them about gamification processes, they just told me, "Oh no, we have already our expert. Here he is," and basically it was the guy who was designing sweepstakes. He was designing, this kind of buy one get three products. He was designing marketing tools. There was nothing about gamification in his work, but he was like a gamification expert, because in their view, if you offer some kind of reward and then keep track, some leaderboard, that's enough. So badges and leaderboards are not gamification. And I've noticed also a lot of times advertising for apps of various sorts, but mostly I think it was health apps, like gym health apps. They would attract customers saying, "Oh, this is like Duolingo for health," or "This is Duolingo for gym," because everyone acknowledged that Duolingo did something well, but it's not about stars and badges and leaderboards. That's what they perceive. That's what they see. It's much deeper and layered. It's more about flow. It's more about autonomy and agency, giving the agency to your customer, giving them a meaningful play, giving them a field where they can express themselves, where they can meet others. So it's not nowhere near about just badges and leaderboards. But also, one of the big misconceptions is that gamification is needed everywhere. So I see gamification being placed in places where there's no need, because the customers or the users are already motivated intrinsically. They don't need this kind of external thing, and it can actually mess their motivation. So many don't realize that gamification can backfire. It can actually increase anxiety. It can increase pressure, competitiveness. Some users are too sensitive to be exposed to competitiveness, for example. And oftentimes gamification techniques are abused by, for example, mobile games in form of monetization. And this monetization primarily works by manipulating your attention. And many think that gamification is the same as manipulating users' focus, users' attention, but it's not. It's actually, again, providing safe space and providing meaningful field of play. But also, what I see in a lot of apps is poor design, and oftentimes they will try to substitute gamification for actually good design. So gamification is not a band-aid. It cannot like fix your poor design. It needs to emerge from the experience itself, and it needs to be as unique as the experience you're providing. And for that, you need well-designed app. You need to understand your customer base very well. You need to understand their problems and issues very well. And that's why universally, when we see a success, it will be almost always about, I had a problem as a maker of this tool, and then I shared it with others. I can deeply relate to that. Like this year, I finished a novel which I was trying to write from 2008, but I designed a framework to help narrative designers because I had struggled with it for years, and being able to write today based on my very own framework kind of makes me happy, because like, okay, what helped me is helping others. And I think that's that should be the main approach. And even for investors, like if you are not passionate about finding help, employ people who do find their passion in solving a specific problem, because gamification won't fix anything. It will just emerge from the project itself naturally. And of course, you need some skills and some knowledge and some practical frameworks that are going to help you shape it. But if it's just pressed into your app, it's not going to work.
And who is this person who can provide you gamification? Is it a game designer or it's a different profession?
It should be. It can be game designer, but also I think it could be anyone who actually took their time to be educated in gamification processes. There are many gamification frameworks out there, and if you learn about gamification, then you will learn all these game design elements. So you don't have to be like super special game designer, but you also need to know what you're doing basically. And I find that educators, especially those who work with kids, kind of grasp this intuitively, because they understand from their natural interactions with kids that you cannot bribe kids basically. Yeah, sure, for some urgent stopgap measures like, hey, I'll give you candy if you do this, but in the long term, teachers who have to be with their students for years, they understand that gamification doesn't work like here's a candy, now go do it. So yeah, I would say it's not necessary to be made by game designer, but you need to know what you're doing. Game designers and educators, I think, just have more adjacent experience that can help.
So you can say that any type of game designer maybe will not help you to do gamification.
No.
There should be something
No.
on top, like
Yeah.
sub-specialization, otherwise
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
educators or from the game
Yeah.
designer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's definitely something to be at least informed about. You don't have to be PhD in gamification. I'm not sure if even if it exists, but you need to be educated within this framework, because otherwise you're going to be making a lot of mistakes and you can actually hurt the people you're trying to help.
Mhm. And what are the historically origin? What is the historical origin of gamification in mental health, for example?
I would say as soon as people started dancing around fire. I mean, here you have our ancestors scared of dark, of spirits, of whatever, and some super smart guy said like, okay, let's dance around the fire and pretend that, let's play. Let's just don't do it for real. Let's just do it in a safe environment while everyone is around us, chanting and giving us, audio feedback that we are supported. And basically, I don't know who invented this, but I would say that dancing was the first and the best origin of gamification, in sense that it's what gamification is at its core, providing safe environment that kind of incentivizes you to navigate your trauma. But if we are going to talk about modern times and technology, I would say that first attempts started in the 90s, because there were a lot of games who were not exactly apps, not exactly games, but they were called experiences back in the day. And for example, there was a game called Journey to the Wild Divine, and it was a biofeedback game. Like it used to teach you relaxation through something that looks like a game. So that were one of the first examples. Of course, there were serious games back then. I remember Amnesty International was actually sponsoring a game contest where they were trying to create game which is going to be used in education, but also in topics of empathy and raising awareness, like sensitivizing students towards certain topics which are not often talked about, like political prisoners and their status, dictatorships. While not directly mental health tool, it was first attempt to use games to kind of illuminate difficult topics. Of course, with the rise of CBT, I would say early 2000s, where the first apps, I think one of the first was Mood Gym, trying to apply therapeutic principles to make certain activities more engaging, like going to gym. And of course, for PTSD, anxiety, but also ADHD, I think even in the 80s there were clinical and military uses of games, especially serious games, as means to tackle these issues. After all, art therapy is even older. Like in the Grotowski was doing art therapy in 50s and 60s, and he was not a pioneer, so it was already existing within the art. So I would say gamification per se came with the how to say, when games become more prevalent, computer games primarily. But yeah, maybe 70s, 80s were the beginnings of modern gamification.
Mhm. How important is narrative and storytelling in mental health related game design?
I would say extremely, because we are creature of stories. We perceive the world as a big ongoing story with ourselves in a main character. So we connect through stories. We use stories both offensively and defensively. Like, you would invent a story about someone if you don't like them, like justifying your projections, but you also would tell stories about yourself if you need to protect a certain part of yourself which is wounded. So stories were with us forever. In context of mental health apps and games, the most important thing I would say is to create emotional resonance, so the players can kind of see themselves in the struggle. But also, stories provide safe distance. So if you're playing a game or using an app, you're not directly attached to your trauma at that moment. You're going through feelings, observing them through a metaphor of a story or a character or environment, and you can make this kind of soft identification, like, okay, this is similar to my situation or not, but you're not you're not kind of in the spot. And in that sense, I think that for more severe mental health issues, games could be even more helpful, because they create more distance and more safety, rather than mental health app, which kind of addresses more directly to the user. Of course, it's all matter of how designed they are, but yeah, story also provides this kind of it's a bit like a two-way street. So at one sense they create distance, but also they create like closeness, in sense that what is a game? A game is a series of meaningful choices, and making these meaningful choices while being connected to them in emotional context makes you kind of supported, because you regain the agency. You're no longer the on the victim side of a context. You connect and you make choice, and for that only stories can provide context. I don't think that a simple visual clues can do it, or visual effects. But also, let's not forget that narrative in modern games is not just about dialogues or some words. A narrative design nowadays is also about how every element interacts with the player. So in this case, it would mean also what's happening to the user experience. I was assisting a group of young Czechoslovakian students who were building an app/game because they wanted it to be a game experience for the user, but like therapeutical tool for the facilitators and mental health workers. And the game was about overcoming or supporting people with claustrophobia, and they were doing it in VR. And they hired me as a narrative designer to kind of help create the flow, which is very important for gamified apps and games in general, to make meaning, to help the users make their own meaning, because the more personal and relatable this meaning making is, it feels like more powerful and more supportive.
Yes, now said interesting phrase, yes, that the game is set of meaningful choices. And here I have a question for you. How does player autonomy and choice influence emotional outcomes in mental health games? Can you talk about this topic more, about the freedom, about the choice, and how does it apply? How does it influence? Please share more about it.
Well, I'm sure that someone with deeper background in mental health theory and practice would know this better than me, but autonomy, as I experienced it in my process, autonomy is one of the core pillars of well-being. Like the moment there's trauma, the next moment fear of scarcity of choices arises, and that same moment you have this huge urge to regain control. And what is this about? It's about regaining the ability to make autonomous choices, and therefore it's like directly connected. So player autonomy and ability to have choices which influence flow of the game is directly connected to emotional outcomes, because it empowers you. If you can make if you can demonstrate your agency, then you can make decisions which are not only rational or fear based, fear influenced, but also you can make those choices which are connected with your emotions, or which make emotional decisions. So you're no longer kind of put in a fight or flight situations, but you can actually, you can stop surviving. You can stop like focusing on one thing and seeking for one only option, but you can start living and kind of enacting your autonomy to do whatever you want. I mean, even when a child grows, they misbehave on purpose because they want to see what kind of autonomy they have, what kind of how can they express themselves. So basically, autonomy of making choices is, I would say, essential for our feeling of freedom also. But also in games, autonomy is often presented as choices, and oftentimes it's in a form of like a branching path. Like if I do this, then something will happen. If I do that, something else will happen. And it helps. I think it helps us realize and recognize how the world will react to our choices, and it can be a powerful tool for reframing a lot of trauma, because basically certain trauma-based behaviors, they often call them patterns. They stem from this saved me once. I reacted, the world reacted back, and now this is my truth. And in fact, it's not that the world reacted. It's just in this situation they received a certain reaction, usually traumatic, from their caretakers or whatever. So if they can experience new choice which doesn't have the same income, it can be widely liberating and can be widely healing. To put it in plain English, if I reach out and I get slapped, I will create a meaning around that. I'm not good. I'm to be punished, and that's my whole story now. And that's my only option. My imagination sees no other option but not to reach out, because if I reach out, I will get slapped. But in a game where you can explore different options, you can see that, yeah, maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe I reach out and I don't get slapped, so I can rewire. I can say, so this is not the rule. The world can react differently, and I think it's very powerful healing tool. But also, the thing is, choices don't have to be huge. Don't have to be big. Oftentimes, trauma paralyzes us to make even the smallest of choices. And oftentimes in games, and especially in gamified apps, making this small step, making these small choices kind of validates us. Like, yeah, you did good. This is good. This is okay. I sent email. This is good. This is cool. Next step. I can take these baby steps, and they can help me kind of be more reflective. Like, oh, look, I did this and nothing bad happened. And it can lead towards bigger empowerment through some more meaningful choices, and some, giving us the courage to kind of broaden our autonomy. So what games do differently, games kind of offer you binary reactions. If there's a choice, you either get punished or not, punished or rewarded, or punished or nothing. In mental health games, choices have to be supportive. So not false, not fake, like yay, bravo you, but certainly not overwhelming and not punishing, to be functional.
Interesting. And I was thinking now about gamification, and I think in gamification it is always very specific path. And the aim of gamification is kind of to lead you to specific, for example, habit development. If we talk about mental health, for example,
Yeah.
Stress reduction program. So you learn using the gamification how to have reaction, which help you support your stress reduction program. From week to week of using the app, you have new habits that follow you. And in this case, I little bit not understand. Do you think still it is necessary to have kind of choice things, or maybe it's something that you talked before as overwhelming and you need to simplify and clearly distinguish this is a game and this is a gamification, so we don't need to have so much deep storytelling, for example?
I think that so I have let's give an example. So habit building apps. I've used those which are not gamified, and I use those who try to use this kind of stars and badges and leaderboards, and they didn't work because the apps which don't have any gamification, they were basically organizers. They were kind of supporting me in the sense of, hey, there's some tools to facilitate your decision making, but they were not actually supporting me to make decisions. The gamified apps for building habits try to externalistically give me some kind of rewards, which I don't connect emotionally to. So I get another star, so what? And there's nothing wrong with counting stars or being on some kind of leaderboard, but without any emotional context, it's not working. Well, one app that did help a lot was actually totally designed like a game. I was in a fantasy world with nice fluffy pink environment. There were different cute creatures, and I had a lot of freedom of choice from the get-go. So I would decide what my tasks are. I would decide what my goals are. I would prioritize. And I think it sounds like, oh, so they did nothing for you. No. Teaching me how to list my needs, teaching me how to prioritize, which is very important, making these tiny little choices that empower my agency, and then make me a part of a story. So, for example, if I'm participating in doing my tasks, I'm not doing it just to receive stars. I'm doing it to support others as much as well as me, because each task would be turned into a little story. And for example, I don't know, if my task is brush teeth every day, it was like, oh, this tooth fairy is arrived. They're trying to steal your teeth. Let's defeat her. And then your task of brushing teeth and your friend's task of brushing teeth kind of coalesce together, and you gain certain number of points and you solve this task. So the meaning of this is to create a little story that connects me emotionally to myself and to the others, and reinforces what I've already been doing, which is making little choices, doing little acts of autonomy, and of course this app worked much better than the others.
Talking about some kind of side effect of this more deeper, are there mechanics you would avoid entirely when designing for users with mental health challenges?
Yeah. Don't use anything basically which can demotivate or to re-traumatize. So punishments, I would say no. Games do punish you, like you play, and then if you fail, it's game over and something bad happens, you lose all items or you lose your progress. So don't do punitive failure loops. But also don't reinforce compulsive behavior. So loot boxes, for example. Oh, there's going to be, some reward, we don't know what. This kind of, addictive mechanics I would completely avoid. One of the key elements of addictive mechanics is endless loop. For example, a lot of trauma in children is induced by not being sure when the punishment will come, and so they live in this endless state of guilt. So don't do endless. Don't do like this goes forever. This task goes forever. This goal is forever. Give me like contained chunks of progress. For example, if we're speaking about, I don't know, Duolingo, one of the bad aspects of this kind of gamification they did is there's no clear goal. Like I enrolled in a Russian course, and I had no idea that it's just going to cover one basic Russian, and there was like a big disappointment when it ended. Just as well as, for example, in some other languages, there's no end. You simply go forever. So if they would be, they did some of this to mitigate. They do like a chunks of lessons or flavors or types of lessons, but generally avoid endless, like something that has no progress. Tell me in advance, you're going to be learning this, you're going to be outcome is going to be this, and let me move towards this. But also, I would say simplify wherever you can, because oftentimes complex mechanics can lead to high cognitive load, and it can trigger anxiety. Like don't do time pressure things like, oh, time is running out, or overwhelming also with sensory, like don't do too much things that games usually kind of play as their strong point. Gentle challenge, include rests, include pauses, let players set their own pacing. If something needs to be done in a certain time, let players decide how much time is going to be. So yeah, I think generally avoid everything that kind of would trigger those who use the app.
And for people maybe who never did a game production and never really created a game, for example, healthcare specialists who are watching us, or even business or tech specialists, can you walk us through the key phases of designing a game with emotional or psychological outcomes in the mind?
I would say it revolves more or less around steps and tasks that you would basically do if you're doing any other game design or app design. So first thing is research, but before research, I would say empathy. So find your empathy with the users, understand them. What are their triggers? What are the therapeutical goals? And here is also good to include scientists in this stage. Talk to them, especially those who work with clients, with real people. What do users report? What kind of behaviors do they report? What kind of need they have? What supports them? What doesn't support them? What are the misconceptions? So I would say big, deep, empathic research is the most important.
So one thing, so when we already start a project, we already should include clinicians or therapists with us from the beginning, from the scratch, yes?
Yes. For example, I can have empathy towards addictive personality types from my experience or my parents' experience or whatever. But if I didn't work in a clinic with, I don't know, alcoholics or something, I need to inform as deep as I can. So it cannot be done by Googling. You have to speak to people who actually work in the therapy, because they will tell you the deepest traps, like what helps, what doesn't help, what therapeutic goals they set, what are their experiences with users. I would say it's maybe too early to speak to users directly, but clinicians and scientists can really help you give deeper perspective, which is important because it's valuable research, but it also deepens the empathy. Game designers are generally broadly educated in sense that they know stuff, but and a lot of times they would redo their research. But in mental health games or in mental health apps, you need to take it a notch. You have to kick it up a few notches. You have to involve scientists early. What you don't do, don't ask scientists to design the process for you, because you cannot be sure if they understand the needs of the game. But first are the needs of the clients, and for that I think you should involve clinicians as early as possible. So after this deep research, we do something called emotional intent mapping. Basically, it's also called in game design pillars of fantasy. So what kind of feelings do you want to evoke? What kind of emotions do you want your users to experience? But also, where in a gameplay loop do you want them to arise? So what kind of feelings do you want to have in the beginning or before the game starts? Because each game has a core loop, like a certain set of actions that kind of rolls on and on. So what do you want to do at the beginning of the loop? How do you want them to feel at the end of the loop? How do you want them to feel at the end of the game? One of the very cool games out there called Journey. It took game designers 1 year to fine-tune the feelings they wanted to express and actual gameplay that will lead towards these feelings. So it's a very delicate process, but if you know where you're heading with it's going to save you a lot of time and money. So emotional intent mapping, I think, is very important. Then only comes like systems design and mechanics, like let's build core loops that reinforces the emotions. Let's do the early balance, maybe some feedback, and also something called emotional pacing. So how is your game played, and what kind of emotional levels are going to follow? I discovered that neuroscience helps here a lot. I was privileged to work with my brother-in-law, who's a neuroscientist, and we tested these theories in actual production, and it was very important for us to kind of test the emotions of players while playing a game, so we can see how the gameplay pace and the events in the game, how do they relate with emotional pacing of a client or user, because you don't want your feedbacks and your play to overwhelm them or kick them out of the emotions you design. When you have this strong core design, then I say comes the aesthetics. So you craft music, you craft characters if needed, or I don't know, whatever UX, UI elements, visuals. Generally, you kind of give it a visual style. And then, as early as possible, you should start testing, but start small, like test diverse kind of play testers. Test it on your clinician friends. Test it on your or on interested people. Test it on people who actually are invested. Test it for with your co-workers. But then, when you gather enough info, especially watching out for distress signals, you can also test it with the users. And I would suggest in this stage for it to be tested under supervision. So never test alone with your test subject, but always have either their therapist or someone informed about their particular need and trauma so that you can kind of be in a safe environment always. And of course, as every project needs to be doing, I iterate, yeah, like do another version, fine tune. Yeah, like what kind of emotional patterns, emotional map is there? If there's some need for some content warnings or some support tools, like in a tabletop games, they would be a few cards on a table. So whenever someone feels comfortable, they can touch the card and not explain, just pause the game. So I would say in these iterations, it's very important to not only improve your product, but also reinforce the safety. Like what kind of safety tools we can provide for the users, especially if the game is or app is dealing with high sensitive cases. And narrative, where does narrative come into play? I would say, again, as early as possible, but it's not like set in stone, in the sense that sometimes narrative can come after the mechanics is applied, and sometimes narrative needs to go a bit earlier. I would say it depends on in case-to-case basis, like what kind of app or game are we talking about.
So we first start from research, and especially interviewing and brainstorming with clinicians or specialists on specific disease management and healing. Then second step, we are building.
We're building our why. Why are we building this, and what
yes,
do we
the loop, the game design mechanic. Yes, what is the game exactly for these reasons? Yes, we understand the emotional, not to go, and we can say that during this stage we also think on hypothesis, which we want to test on the third period. Yes? And the third period is starting when we already have something, and we start testing with kind of warm auditory people who are more trust us, which is can give us some more advance, and then little by little we iterate, adding more elements. Yes, but this also starts on this core kind of three pillars. Yes, first three stages when we do the real deep research on these levels, and then we already validate and test.
Exactly. Yeah, and it goes in loop, and
Cool. Before we will go to last question, we already need to finish. Time is going. By the way, very interesting. I would say that, in my opinion, as a digital health expert and as a person who worked before in gaming, I believe that games have underestimated influence in healthcare, and I do believe that in future, when our perception of app itself will change, especially in the development of user experience and user interface, who will use game design elements more and narrative elements more, because as you said, still many of the technologies nowadays are like on the testing period, and we kind of learning really how to use them. And I believe that gaming can help have amazing and long-lasting effect for people, especially in mental health therapy, because as you said, stories can help you to have a safe space, a kind of safe distance, and same time it can engage you, and same time it can give you some experience traumatic, but it can be kind of soft traumatic experience, which help you to overcome your own trauma, to see it from other side, yes, to reprogram your reaction, yes, which is not so easy to do. Recently, I had a small conference on VR, and what psychologists said, that what is special for VR, that you can literally recreate the situation, and in daily life, if you will have the same situation, it will be much more fear. You will have much more fear, and it's really hard to do anything with that. Can you tell me a little bit on your vision, maybe a little bit like futuristic, gaming in mental health or gaming in healthcare? How can it grow? What it has benefits which nobody else have in other type of, I don't know, technologies?
I think that I've read a really cute interview between a therapist and AI. So my friend, who's doing systemic constellations, but she's also a clinical therapist and does different kind of traditional therapies. She talked to AI and inquiring like what would be the future of therapy and what kind of role would AI play. And there was a really interesting answer that AI gave actually, and he said, I'm providing everything to my user, like to my best ability. I provide all the data, everything, and the therapist with the power of empathy can withhold something so that the patient can grow into these insights themselves. So I firmly believe that in the future, our game, mental health games and apps will become more empathic and more smart. If we become also more empathic and more smart, if we realize that providing, carrots and sticks is not what mental health support is about, but if we actually reorient to creating safe spaces, providing tools for meaning making, and then in a safe environment allow our patients or users to kind of grow themselves, because no game, no help app, nothing will just pour the knowledge or pour the health in your mind and soul, but technology can help that you kind of test out. And I think it especially goes true for like shadow aspects. So I found it that whenever I was allowed to do the meaning making in both light and dark, so to speak, to both play with my shadow in a safe environment where safety means I have tools to regain my autonomy and my agency, and not necessarily I'm protected from some negative experiences. I think that's the future. So I think the future in mental health apps is actually depending on us as a society, as workers in this field. Can we have more empathy? Can we have more tools to provide playful spaces, which are also safe spaces? Can we understand that nothing we do is going to save anyone, but if we provide them with like a nourishing environment, they can support them, learn a bit by bit to support themselves. And if games, if mental health games and apps don't go in this direction, I'm afraid that there would be a lot of dark sides, like providing more anxiety, simply becoming one more task and one more tool you need to do, one more pill you need to take, instead of providing the field of growth.
Thank you. And last question for newcomers in our field, in mental health, serious gaming, or mental health gamification. So let's better focus on the gaming side. We kind of dig in it deeper. What top 3 advice can you give to make a successful game?
Okay, first of all, collaborate a lot, like talk to people, play test your app often, early in the development process, in the middle of the development process, in the end, test. Let every sprint be followed by a test. Think small and deep, like short game, focused game, maybe with one mechanic. It can be more important than like building the whole world and a lot of features. So don't overwhelm yourself and don't overwhelm your users. And the third thing is always start with empathy and not with features. So design from needs, not from assumptions. Design from a place of, I know that they need this because I've learned, I've experienced, I've researched. So learn what are the needs and design for these needs. Better than just, having theories and then testing your assumptions.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it was a podcast, Gamified Mental Health Apps versus Mental Health Games, with Ranko Trifkovic, narrative and game design expert specialized in education. Thank you, Ranko, so much.
Thank you.
And this was Meandre, and I'm a leader of Mental Growth Network, a community for people interested in developing healthier world, especially focuses on mental health. Thank you so much and bye-bye. Please subscribe, put like. See you soon.